What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always on this hump day. I appreciate every single one of you. We will get to the offensive coordinator search a little bit later, but I want to start with the Patriots power structure. When we look at the front office and how this is going to be put together and what it all means, too many people were triggered by Mike Vrabel mentioning Elliot Wolf at the press conference. We talked about this on Monday. My live reaction right away, and I try to tell many people who were worried, were concerned about Vrabel mentioning Elliot Wolf. Calm down. It doesn't mean much. It just doesn't mean much. Elliot Wolf is here. He's in the front office. Mike Vrabel's first day on the job as the head coach of the Patriots. He's standing up there, and he's going to give a little bit of love to Elliot Wolf to make him feel like he's part of the program. And Robert Kraft, who is responsible for putting Elliot Wolf in the position that he was in before Mike Vrabel came to town, Vrabel's going to give some love to Kraft by bringing up Elliot Wolf. And way too many people were counting how many times the name Elliot Wolf was said during that press conference. It didn't mean much at all. And now we know, because yesterday, Adam Schefter, Mike Reese, when you look at Greg Bedard, my buddy, right? Reese's Pieces, Shefty, and Bedard all tell us yesterday that Mike Vrabel is going to have the power. Mike Vrabel is going to have the hammer, as Reese said. Now, I'm going to get to the idea of whether or not a football czar in Mike Vrabel is the way to go. But before I get there, I just want to finish a couple of thoughts on Elliot Wolf, this front office, and what's happened over the past couple of days. Don't focus on words, folks. Do not focus on words. Focus on action. And while Mike Vrabel was standing up there talking to the media on Monday, mentioning the name of Elliot Wolf, what was actually happening? What were the actions? The actions were Vrabel went out and got his guy. Ryan Cowden, who was with the Giants, left the Giants to join the Patriots. And we found out from Burt Breer that Cowden is going to be the number 2 guy behind Elliot Wolf in the front office. I laid this out a couple of times, and I'm not sure if everybody picked up what I was putting down over the past couple of podcasts. But there's a system here. If you want to bring somebody in and put that person over the top of Elliot Wolf, and you want to let the league know that, if you do that, you have to go through a process. You have to interview people. You have to go through a search. You have to go through the Rooney Rule of the front office. And so if you don't want to go through that process, but you want to give power to Mike Vrabel, this is exactly how you do it. You keep Elliot Wolf where he is on the masthead. You bring Vrabel in. Vrabel brings his guy in. And voila, you now have two of the top 3 decision makers in the front office who are new to the program, Vrabel and Cowden. So you don't have to go through the shenanigans of a search. The Patriots have already proven to us they're not worried about your search, NFL. They couldn't care less about your search. And this is a way to get past the search, keep the staff intact that have done all of the work. Mike Vrabel and Ryan Cowden are not going to walk in as they try to figure out the staffing of this football team. They're not going to walk in and sift through 500 scouting reports and start from scratch and be like, here we go, baby. It's not realistic. So how do you keep the staff intact so they can do the legwork while Mike Vrabel and Ryan Cowden come in and they focus on the coaching staff and they focus on the players that have been whittled down? It's as simple as that. If you want to give Vrabel power and you want to give Vrabel his guy without a search, this is how you do it. You bring his guy in, you put him under Wolf so you don't have to go through the process, so Cowden can walk right in, and within a day, within 24 hours, he's right there with Vrabel without having to go through all the shenanigans. I'd also say this, the fact that Cowden is the number 2 guy, do you remember who Elliot Wolf said the number 2 guy was last offseason? He said Matt Groh was the number 2 guy. So if you wanted Matt Groh to have almost no say, and you wanted Elliot Wolf to not have the final say, you should be very happy with what has happened over the past 48 to 72 hours. Because Mike Vrabel and Ryan Cowden, they are going to have the say. Vrabel is going to have the say. Elliot Wolf is going to help them. He's going to gather the information. He's going to gather the scouting reports, and he's going to give it to the head coach and his right-hand man. That's what's going to happen. Don't pay attention to words. Pay attention to the actions. I said this on Monday's podcast. Why would Ryan Cowden come here? He was under contract with the Giants. Why would he come here if he wasn't going to have significant say with his guy? But that's what's happening. That's how this has played out. Matt Groh has dropped down a few pegs. Wolf has dropped down a couple of pegs. Vrabel, Cowden at the top. They're just not going to say it. Because if you say it, then you're admitting to the NFL what actually happened. Now, maybe they'll say it in May. Maybe they'll say it in June. Maybe they'll say it next offseason. And they'll go through a search and they will interview Cowden internally and they'll give Cowden the job and Wolf might be completely gone, or maybe Wolf stays on as a scout and helps the front office. But all that we should care about is who has the final say, who has the power. Mike Vrabel was making Elliot Wolf feel wanted at that press conference. All those interviews that he has done over the past few days, and he's brought up Elliot Wolf, and he has spoken glowingly of Elliot Wolf. He might feel like Wolf is a good scout. He might feel like Wolf can help him out, but he also wanted to make Wolf feel like he was a part of this because he knows he's going to need him to do this legwork. There's collaboration across the NFL. People hate that word for some reason here in New England. I think it's probably because Bill Belichick didn't have much collaboration for 20 years or so. Towards the tail end, we started to see a little bit more of that. But collaboration happens everywhere, in every front office, in every football program. Greg Bedard said it yesterday on the podcast that we recorded. Greg brought up the New York Giants and Hard Knocks when Joe Shane is talking about Saquon Barkley. Who's in that room having that conversation about Saquon Barkley? There's like 6 or 7 people in that room. Inevitably, Joe Shane makes the call, and Joe Shane decides that we can walk away from Barkley. But everybody in that room is going back and forth. Like, that's collaboration. And it happens inside of every NFL organization in 2025. So Elliot Wolf's not overruling anybody. Matt Groh and Elliot Wolf are not going to have much power at all, if any. They're going to do the work, and they're going to hand the work to Mike Vrabel, who's going to bounce off, I think, ideas with Ryan Cowden. That's how this is going to work. All right, before we continue, could do a couple of things to help out this podcast. I say it all the time. Doesn't cost you any money. Takes very little time from your schedule. Hit that thumbs up button as you watch us on YouTube. Hit that like button. It helps us with the algorithm. More people get to see the podcast. We build the community by hitting that like button. So don't forget to hit that thumbs up. Don't forget to throw a comment in as well. How do you feel now after a couple of days removed from the press conference, and we're getting all the reports that, as I had said well before these reports, it ain't going to be Elliot Wolf. Vrabel did not walk into this organization to listen to Elliot Wolf tell him what he's going to do with his football team. How do you feel now? Do you feel a little bit more relaxed? Do you feel better about things? Don't forget to like, don't forget to comment, and don't forget to subscribe. We're at almost 5,400 subscribers. The goal is 5,500. We can get there. Let's keep pushing. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, click that notify bell. My friends at Spotify, Apple Pods, audiences are growing over there as well, picking up some steam with this podcast. It's because of you rating and reviewing. So you can do that to help out the show. All right, one other thing I wanted to talk about before I get to this idea of Mike Vrabel being a football czar and whether or not I like the idea. Vrabel spoke to Tom Curran. I had a couple of people reach out to me. I had JB on my Patreon page reach out to me and ask me about the comments that Vrabel had with Curran about Elliot Wolf. And here's what Vrabel said. Having talked to Elliot, getting to know him through the interview process, there were some things that maybe didn't allow him to completely invest in personnel. there were some things that maybe didn't allow him to completely invest in personnel. And some people thought that Vrabel was talking about money and how much money Elliot Wolf was allowed to invest in the football team. I didn't take that at all from Elliot Wolf's comments. I mean, from Mike Vrabel's comments about Wolf. I actually, my immediate reaction to that was he didn't allow to be completely invested in personnel, things that maybe didn't allow him to do that. I took that as, well, Wolf was spread too thin. That was my immediate reaction, that Elliot Wolf did not have enough time to invest working on personnel. I'm not going to sit here. This is not a defense of Elliot Wolf, everybody. This is not a defense of Elliot Wolf. That's my caveat. I'm just saying what I think Mike Vrabel meant by mentioning what he mentioned to Tom Curran. There were some things that maybe didn't allow him to completely invest in personnel. I think he's talking about the fact that they had to implement a grading system and start that. Now, they didn't use the grading system in full last year, but they had to implement a new system. But the biggest thing was Gerard Mayo. And I'm not going to beat this horse to death again because we've talked about it plenty of times on this podcast. We talked about it in real time last year at this time, talked about it leading into the official announcement that Mayo was going to be the new head coach. Gerard Mayo did not have a Rolodex. So Gerard Mayo had to rely on Elliot Wolf. That is not the usual process. As we heard from Mike Vrabel yesterday on WEEI on the Greg Hill Show, Vrabel said that he's going to spend the next couple days contacting offensive coordinators and talking to guys. Usually, when you hire a head coach, the head coach talks to the coordinators. The head coach talks to, the staff and puts the staff together. Usually, that's how it works. But it didn't work that way with Gerard Mayo because he had absolutely zero Rolodex to work from. So who was putting together the interviews? Who was going out trying to pluck names from different teams across the NFL? That was Elliot Wolf. And all that time that Wolf had to spend on trying to put together a coaching staff took away from the time he could spend scouting and talking to the personnel staff and looking at the draft and free agency. Every single minute that he spent trying to put a coaching staff together took away from the other thing that he was supposed to be doing, which was the main priority, actually working on personnel. That's what I took from Vrabel's comments to Tom Curran. And that's why, don't forget, Elliot Wolf did not go to the GM meetings last year, which is abnormal because he was stuck back here at Gillette trying to put together a coaching staff. That's not normal. It's not usual. Not how it's supposed to work. Mike Vrabel is going to put together his coaching staff. That's how it's going to work. It's how it's supposed to work. So it seems like Robert Kraft and others feel like that negatively impacted Wolf's ability to do his job in full because he was pulled in a direction that he should not have been pulled into. But he was. So take that for what it's worth. All right. Should Mike Vrabel be the football czar of this operation? Should he be the end-all, be-all? Should Vrabel have the hammer, as Mike Reese put it? I know some of you will disagree with this, but I do not believe Mike Vrabel should be the football czar of this franchise. Let's start here. Nobody in the NFL has that power. Nobody in the NFL currently has that kind of power. Jim Harbaugh won a national championship at Michigan. He went to a Super Bowl with the 49ers. He was a prized candidate in last year's cycle. Harbaugh went to the Chargers. Harbaugh did not get full personnel power of that roster. He didn't get that, even though he won a national championship. You know who doesn't have full say on the roster? That would be Andy Reid. Andy Reid is not the football czar in Kansas City. So I don't think Vrabel should have the all-world power and control everything. I don't think that's a good idea. Things fell apart with Belichick inevitably when Belichick had all that power and eventually it got to be too much and things went to hell. So I don't need Mike Vrabel to be the football czar. I don't need that to happen. I don't need him to be the end all be all. So people will say, Nick, what do you want? You want Elliot Wolf running things? No, I do not want Elliot Wolf running things. Here's how I want this to go. I want Mike Vrabel to identify, to define the identity of this football team that he wants. I want him to define the philosophy that this team is going to go by. I want him to define the type of player that he wants, offensively, defensively. I want Vrabel and whoever his OC and DC are going to be, I want those three gentlemen to go to Elliot Wolf, Ryan Cowden, and the staff in the front office and say, this is going to be our identity, offensively, defensively. This is going to be our philosophy as a football team. And these are the types of players that I want. Vrabel said on EEI yesterday, when he was talking about wide receivers, he wants wide receivers with large catch radiuses that can make contested catches, but that could also separate. So there you go. So Vrabel goes to Wolf and Cowden. Cowden probably already knows this, but Vrabel goes to the staff in the front office and he says, hey, when you guys are looking at wide receivers, when you guys are scouting wide receivers, when you're watching film, this is what I want from my wide receiver on my football team. Boom, 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 boom. And then he walks out. And then let the staff do what they do. And then you put all of that information together. And when you have the list of players that fit the criteria that Vrabel has asked for, you put it in front of Vrabel. That's how this should work. And I would say this. You find the players that fit Vrabel's vision. Then you get together and you collaborate. You talk about those players, right? Let's say you've got 15 receivers that fit the criteria of what Vrabel's looking for. All right, you sit down, and then that's when you collaborate. You go back and forth. What do you like about this guy? What do you not like about this guy? And you discuss the 15 wide receivers that fit the criteria. And then I want Vrabel and Cowden to be responsible to kind of set that board. Whether it's Cowden taking the lead or whatever, but I want Cowden and Vrabel to finally set that board. Before you go into free agency, before you go into the draft, make sure that Mike Vrabel is comfortable, along with his coordinators, everybody's comfortable with who is on that board. I would not give Mike Vrabel control of the 90-man roster. I wouldn't do that. But what I would do, I would give Mike Vrabel control of the 53. So you give him 90 players, you get to camp, and then Mike Vrabel makes the decisions on who is on this team and who is not on this team. So it doesn't give him the full power and the full say. He's a part of the process. He defines what he wants: identity, philosophy, and type of player. Front office goes out there. They do the legwork. They come back with all of that legwork. You collaborate. Vrabel lets you know, I like this guy, I like that guy. These are some of my favorite players that you have put together here. He watches film. He goes back and watches more of these guys because Vrabel's not going to have the time, okay? Vrabel's not going to be able to watch, hundreds of players on film from now until the draft. It's just not going to happen. So he sets the idea, he sets the agenda as far as player, philosophy, identity. Front office goes out there. They get all the information, all the intel. It comes back to Vrabel. They collaborate to figure out who gets tossed from that work, who stays in. Ryan Cowden has the 90-man roster. He sets that roster. And then Vrabel takes that roster of 90 guys and he goes to work. And he figures out which 53 he wants to keep from that 90. That's how I would like this to go. I don't want Vrabel marching around Gillette Stadium, marching around this facility like Bill Belichick, keeping an eye on every little thing and having the power above everyone else. Let Cowden set the 90-man roster, get to camp, let Vrabel pick his guys. Pick his 53 from that 90. That's what I would do. All right. I've got some thoughts on the offensive coordinator search. I also have some thoughts about the people who believe hiring Mike Vrabel is going to hurt Drake Maye, is going to get in the way of Drake Maye's development. Have some thoughts on that. Before I get to those thoughts, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you want to throw a super chat my way to jump to the front of the line with your comment or question, you can do that. Always taking those super chat contributions. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Those things help us with the algorithm. That's how we grow this audience. All right. Offensive coordinator interviews. Nothing has leaked. Pretty interesting. Vrabel said on EEI yesterday that he was going to start this process yesterday afternoon. So I would imagine that Vrabel's been on the phone. He's been calling people. He's spoken to some people. But there's been nothing leaked. We have no idea who he has spoken to just yet. Of course, we have the Josh McDaniels stuff and, people believing that he is the leader in the clubhouse for this job. There have been other names thrown out there by some in the media. Evan Lazar did a really great job of going through a list of possible candidates. You can check it out at Patriots.com. But we don't know. We don't know who Vrabel has contacted yet. We don't know who's coming in for an interview. We do know that Tommy Rees is staying in Cleveland. And there was a lot of talk about Tommy Rees coming here and being the Patriots OC. That obviously ain't happening. I will tell you as a Notre Dame fan, and maybe this has changed because this is going back 2 or 3 years ago. But as a Notre Dame football fan, I will tell you I was not a gigantic fan of Tommy Rees. Now, he was new on the job, and I'm sure he had to learn an awful lot. But just going off of the play calling that I saw from Rees at Notre Dame, I was not in love with the idea of bringing Rees to New England to be the OC. The other thing I had a big question about regarding Rees is that he never has worked with quarterbacks. Now, he was a quarterback in college, right? He was a quarterback at Notre Dame, but he's never developed and worked with quarterbacks. And that would be a concern for me because you're still trying to develop Drake Maye. So I didn't lose any sleep last night thinking that, oh no, they lost Tommy Rees. The world is over. It's all over. Because I wasn't hot on Rees to begin with. Now, there's been some pushback about Mike Vrabel and how he's going to impact the development of Drake Maye, how he could hurt the growth of Drake Maye. He's going to impede Maye's ability to win football games. I've heard this from many people. Hiring a defensive-minded head coach is going to hurt Drake Maye. Hiring a defensive-minded head coach is going to hurt Drake Maye. Here's my question. Why? Why is a defensive-minded head coach going to hurt Drake Maye? Why is it a given? Any coach could hurt Drake Maye, offensively or defensively or special teams, when they come in as a head coach. But why does it seem like it's predetermined? Why is it predetermined that a defensive head coach is just going to ruin your young quarterback? Did we not just watch Jaden Daniels win a playoff game for the Commanders last weekend? Who's his head coach? Oh, it's Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn happens to be a defensive-minded head coach. Coach that side of the ball. Was Jaden Daniels' growth and development this year hurt by Dan Quinn? No, because Quinn hired Cliff Kingsbury to work with Daniels. How about Sean McDermott in Buffalo? Is Sean McDermott hurt or hinder Josh Allen's development because he's a defensive-minded head coach? Or did Josh Allen actually grow and develop exponentially and become one of the best, arguably this year, the best quarterback in football? Sean McDermott did not get in the way of Josh Allen in his trajectory. So I find this weird. How about John Harbaugh for the Ravens? Did John Harbaugh mess with Lamar Jackson's career? Now, I know Harbaugh wasn't a defensive guy. He was a special teams coordinator, but he wasn't an offensive mind. So why do we just all of a sudden, we walk into this and go, man, oh man, here we are. They hired Mike Vrabel. Drake Maye is going to stink now. Dan Quinn did not do that to Daniels. McDermott did not do that to Allen. Harbaugh has not done that to Jackson. How about the fact that Bill Belichick did not do that to Tom Brady? We are living in an area, we watch a football team that literally had a defensive-minded head coach, and we watched the development of the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest player of all time. So why do we just immediately go to some of these things? Look across the NFL. Look across the NFL and look at defensive coaches and offense. Mike Sando wrote about this at The Athletic. He wrote, teams should realize that hiring OCs as head coaches is not critical or even important for making sure your offense and your team contends at the highest levels. And Sando writes, here's a quick look at the head coaches for the top 5 offenses by EPA per play this season, okay? So here are the head coaches for the top 5 offenses by EPA per play this year. Number 5, Dan Quinn, defensive guy. Number 4, Todd Bowles, defensive guy. Number 3, Dan Campbell, offensive guy. Number 2, Sean McDermott, defensive guy. Number 1, John Harbaugh, special teams guy. So when you look at the top 5 offenses by EPA per play this year, 4 of the 5 do not have offensive-minded head coaches. They have great quarterback play, and they have a good offensive operation. Dan Quinn has Kingsbury. Todd Bowles has Liam Cohen, who's done a great job. I mean, Dan Campbell has Ben Johnson. McDermott has Joe Brady. John Harbaugh has Todd Monken. If you find the right offensive coordinator, your quarterback is going to be just fine. And yes, you could change coordinators eventually. You could. But if you build it right and you have the right coaches underneath your OC and your quarterback is talented enough and mature enough, you should be able to survive that if the program is run correctly. Duo Dynamics follows me on Twitter, sent me a tweet. 11 of the top 14 scoring defenses are playoff teams, by the way. Seems like that side of the ball might still be important. 11 of the top 14 scoring defenses made the playoffs this year. So yes, it's tremendously important to develop Drake Maye. But no, hiring Mike Vrabel does not ruin the idea of developing Drake Maye. You just got to find the right guy. You've got to put the right talent around Maye, which Vrabel brought up at Monday's press conference, right? You got to surround the young man with better talent. You certainly have to put a better offensive line in front of him. And you got to find the right offensive coordinator. If you improve the talent, you improve the offensive line, and you go out there and find an offensive coordinator that can do a good job, Drake Maye will be fine. He'll be fine. Let's jump to a couple of super chats here. We got 2 coming in after the huddle. Thanks for the $5. Appreciate it. Sup, buddy? If McDaniels isn't available, who would you rather, Bieniemy or Josh McCown? Also, if Welker was asked to be our wide receivers coach, how would you feel? I'd be okay with Welker. Welker worked with Deebo Samuel in his development. He obviously worked down in Miami with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. The question is, how much did Wes Welker help those players? How talented were they right out of the gates, right? I mean, I'd say Tyreek Hill. You can't really give Wes Welker much credit for Tyreek Hill because he was already a star when he left Kansas City when he was traded, right? But he did help the young Jalen Waddle. When he was in San Francisco, the Niners drafted Deebo Samuel. He helped develop Deebo Samuel. He was obviously a tremendously productive wide receiver in his own right in the NFL. Doesn't mean he's going to be great. Troy Brown, as we saw, had a very good NFL career. Not the best wide receivers coach. But I do think Wes Welker is on the list, I would imagine. I said this guy's name going back a week or 2 ago. I'd be interested in Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline at Ohio State. Obviously, Vrabel has the Ohio State connection. Hartline has done an awesome job working with receivers at Ohio State. Ohio State pumps out great wide receivers consistently. So Hartline is the wide receivers coach. I also think he's like the passing game coordinator or whatever at Ohio State. Hartline's a guy I'd look at. Now, I don't know if Hartline would want to leave Ohio State, but maybe you look at Hartline if he's looking to make a move, make a little bit more money. I'd look at Hartline as well at wide receivers coach. Bieniemy or McCown, I'm out on Bieniemy. Bieniemy had a great run with Andy Reid. He went to the Commanders, did not do a great job. Then he went to the college game this past year. Wasn't necessarily great in college football, right? I think he went, to UCLA, correct? I think he went to UCLA. He's already out. So there's a reason why Eric Bieniemy was stuck in Kansas City forever, never got a job as a head coach, then went to Washington, didn't do a great job, went to college. He's out there as well. So I would not go to Bieniemy. McCown is somebody that, and thanks, ATH, McCown is somebody that Justin brings up. Thanks for the $2 super chat, Justin. That is a name I am really interested in. I'm really interested in Josh McCown. Now, if you are okay with hiring somebody who hasn't called plays, and that's a little concerning for me because we just went through that with Alex Van Pelt for the most part, right? But if you are okay, if you've accepted, if you embrace the idea of hiring somebody who hasn't called plays, Nick Caley is out there, right? Some of the other names, McCown is the one that I'm looking at. And I tweeted this out, I believe on Sunday afternoon, that if you're not going to go with the experienced play caller, McCown has the relationship with Drake Maye going back to high school. So he has a fantastic connection with your quarterback, has known the quarterback since he was in his formative years in high school. That's a big reason why, reportedly, Minnesota tried to trade up for Drake Maye because Josh McCown was part of that room. So McCown has that history with Drake Maye, the relationship that already exists. He has obviously been coaching under Kevin O'Connell, who I have a lot of respect for. I think O'Connell is a very good head coach. I think he's a very good play caller. He's been learning underneath Kevin O'Connell. And Josh McCown has worked with quarterbacks. He was a quarterback at the NFL level, and he has been the quarterback's coach in Minnesota. So if you're telling me you don't want to look at the experienced guys like Josh McDaniels and, maybe some of the other names that have been thrown out there that have had OC experience, if you're telling me you don't want to go that route, Josh McCown is near the top of my list, if not at the top of the list. Nick Caley is interesting to me as well. He was interesting to me last year. But Josh McCown, I think, could be a fantastic idea. And if he ends up being able to work out calling plays, I think he could be a home run. And if you want to bring somebody in that knows May's comfortable with, can communicate with your quarterback, can help develop your quarterback, Josh McCown, I think, is an easy transition from Van Pelt. Anonymous, $9.99, $10 super chat. Thank you, Anonymous. For OC and DC, do you think he might wait on the final decision until after the Super Bowl? He could. You've got to wait to interview these guys in person. You've got to wait until they're eliminated from the playoffs. You've got to wait another week or so for some of these guys, 2 weeks, whatever. If they get to the Super Bowl, you're waiting a while. So that could play a role. I think, however, if Vrabel has his guy like McCown, right? Minnesota's eliminated. So you have more access to Josh McCown right now. Nick Caley is in LA. You got the Rams thing. You got to work around. So that might be an issue. McDaniels not coaching in the NFL, right? So you can bring him in for an interview just like you brought Vrabel in for an interview. No big deal. So it really depends on the list. And I know Vrabel said he has a long list. Of course, he's going to say he has a long list. I think they should go through a search. Even if McDaniels is the favorite, I think you go through a search. Just like I thought you should have had a larger search for the head coach this time around. Just like I felt you should have had a search last year for both the head coach and the GM, whatever. I'm happy that Vrabel's the guy. Thrilled. But I would go through a search. If I'm Vrabel, I would talk to McCown. I would talk to Caley. I would talk to Ray Gone in San Francisco, who's been brought up. I'd obviously talk to Josh McDaniels. I would talk to these guys. I would run through at least 5 to 7 of the top candidates and see what they have to say. That's what I would do. Defensively, same thing. Now, it's interesting. We haven't heard a ton about defensive coordinator. And I know Vrabel on the radio yesterday said that, some guys are under contracts, so you might have to wait. I found that to be interesting. Defensive coordinator, there's a lot of names out there. If Vrabel wants to go out and get an experienced, steady defensive coordinator, Lee Anarumo is out there. Dennis Allen is out there. Robert Saleh is out there. I think Saleh goes to San Francisco if he's not hired as a head coach. But there are a number of names. Mike Zimmer is going to be out there if Mike McCarthy doesn't bring Zimmer with him to the next place. Now, I know Zimmer came out and said that he might retire, but there are a lot of veteran defensive coordinators that have track records. Defensively, I would also say, look, Vrabel is not Mayo. Okay? Vrabel's going to be involved. Vrabel's going to be involved defensively. He's going to be on that practice field. He's going to be working hands-on with these defensive players. And so I think Vrabel obviously helps you on that side of the ball. So I'm less concerned with that than I am with the offensive side. They need to nail the offensive coordinator pick. I know some people have brought up Clint Kubiak, who was down in New Orleans this year. His play calling was very predictable. Again, though, he's a first-time play caller, so maybe he learned a lot from his first year, grows into it. He's a name that would be interesting. But as far as how the timing goes, I think if Vrabel's got his guy, Vrabel's got his guy. If he goes through some of these interviews, right, he talks to 5 to 7 OCs or offensive coaches, and he's got a favorite. He says, that's my guy. Then take your guy and start working, because we know this offense needs a lot of help. The earlier you can get your guy here in town, working and watching the film of what happened in 2024, watching film of Drake Maye, having conversations with the other coaches on staff, having conversations with the front office about why did Jalen Polk not work? Does he just suck? Or did something go wrong? What do you think about Javon Baker? Does he have any future here? Do we want to bring Austin Hooper back? All of those things, right? So the earlier you can get your guy in, the better, because you can start working on things. And that's one of the great parts of having Vrabel here, because you hired Vrabel so quickly that Vrabel's getting to work. All these other teams that are looking for a head coach, they're not interviewing like OCs and DCs right now, right? Like they're trying to figure out who's going to be their head coach. So the Patriots and Vrabel, they have a head start on everybody else. And that's a good thing. Thank you for the super chat, Anonymous. Appreciate all the comments. There's a bunch of them. Obviously, you can't see all of them, especially when I'm going through the super chats, but I appreciate how busy it's been in here today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Again, like, comment, and subscribe. Those things help the podcast grow. 5,500 subscribers is the goal. Coming up on Friday at 3 o'clock, I want to talk about Josh McDaniels. We'll go live on Friday at 3. I want to talk about McDaniels and whether or not he would be my top choice. Should he be the guy? We'll talk about that. Of course, we should have, hopefully, some names coming out over the next 48 hours so we could talk about some of the names that are actually being interviewed. Tomorrow night, I have my NFL podcast, Crafts and Kickoffs. Simple idea. I drink a beer, and we talk about the biggest stories in the NFL. That happens tomorrow night, 7 p.m., live right here on this channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I appreciate every single one of you. When you talk to your friends, your family, your fellow Patriots fans, tell them about us. Help us out. Appreciate you. Talk to you tomorrow night for Crafts and Kickoffs at 7 o'clock. Talk to you on Friday at 3 with more Patriots news. Till then, Nick Cattle Show.